Everyone, something a little bit new. I know you've all been asking for podcasting, and look, everything with Sharoy will be returning, of course, but I thought it's the summer. There's lots going on the transfer front. There might not be a busier window for Arsenal to do this kind of content around. January was dead. Last season wasn't what we wanted in terms of the summer window, but Arsenal are getting busy. Zubimendi is having a medical soon, according to Sammy Mockbell. Benjamin Sesko seems to be the player we want, and I'm here with Ben Mattinson to talk not only about Benjamin Sesko, we're going to be here every week through the summer to talk about transfers, targets, and the reason I want to do this with you, Ben, welcome, Ben, it's good to see you, man. The reason I want to do this with you is because if there's a player we're linked with, you've done a Twitter thread on him. And that is just like, and you know, a lot of people can kind of come in late and go, I know this player. Yeah, I found him on Football Manager. Yeah, I know who this person is. I've watched a few comps. There's something about kind of the meticulous research and detail you have around players that made me really interested in talking to you on a weekly basis, whether it be a player breakdown like we're going to do today on Benjamin Sesko, or whether it be something a little bit broader in terms of the players on the market who we should be looking at and actually putting ideas forward, which is something you regularly do as well on Twitter. Well, we call it X, but anyway, it's been ruined. It's been ruined since it's been called X, but there we go. Ben, welcome. I've rambled on a little bit there, but you know, how are you? And just I guess tell everyone a little bit about yourself and why you're so passionate about scouting and why we're here sort of talking about players weekly now through the summer.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. I mean, I'm looking forward to doing this, like getting to properly speak about players that we've been linked with and try and make sense of all the stuff out there. Even if it's like, if we're looking at a striker, for example, you start to see patterns of the type of player that we're looking at, and then you can start to plan of how we might look next season. It's quite interesting to look at that. But yeah, I mean, throughout the year, I'll be watching endless amount of games, just covering. You know, I try to not I don't narrow down into like one or two leagues. I'll try to focus more on the players themselves. So it's more of a general scouting thing, focus on certain teams or just the upcoming talents. I've been a lot more like youth football focused more recently. And that's not everyone's that bothered about that stuff because I'm more bothered about the senior stuff. But it's definitely interesting because you go back and see some tournaments and you realise that who made it and who didn't helps you to know what to look for and what not. But yeah, so that's type of stuff I'm doing. But this should be great as well.
I'm really looking forward to it, man. And look, let's go into it. Let's talk about Benjamin Sesko, because what we were actually planning earlier in the week was actually a tier list around strikers. Now, if you all want that video, guys, and if the Sesko thing stalls a little bit, then of course we'll do it. It's probably more likely going to be a tier list we do around left wingers now, because there's still an area of the forward line we really need to address. But Benjamin Sesko seems to be the guy Arsenal want. I was skeptical when Florian Plettenberg of Sky Germany came out and said that talks were ongoing because he's linked us with a lot of people, but I've got to give him credit. Within a day or two, more of that emerged, and it seems backed by Fabrizio Romano. I don't know if it's like set in stone, like this is 100% who Arsenal are going for, and you know, basically they won't really pursue anyone else unless the Sesko deal falls through. But it feels to me like this is the one they want to do. Isak doesn't feel possible. Gyokeres is an option, and I will ask about the striker market in a bit. But the first thing I want to know is, are you happy about this? It's as simple as that. Are you happy about Benjamin Sesko? And if so, why? What kind of player are we hopefully getting here?
Yeah, I mean, for me, definitely. I think there's plenty of strikers out there, but the market in general, there aren't many at like the peak age. So I think you end up settling in some areas where they're not the perfect fit. So then you've got to look and think who could be the perfect fit. You know, maybe they aren't right now, but they could be useful now. But in the future, they could become, you know, one of the best strikers in the world. And I think with Sesko, you're looking at someone who's capable of things that a lot of the other strikers aren't. There's moments that he's provided already, and a lot of, you know, whether it's his ball striking from distance, his ridiculous leap in the box, really acrobatic finishes with both feet as well, hitting shots first time on the volley. There was this one volley he scored for Slovenia as well. It was like a long ball over the top, and he hit it with his left foot across goal. And it's like
Very
Van
Van Persie.
Persie type. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
when I
yeah, yeah.
saw that, is it Van Persie or Zlatan? Like the way out, because he's so tall as well, so he's a
Ooh.
bit more like that. So it's like it's about what he could become, and there's a lot of the tools there to become like literally one of the best strikers around. And the fact that he's in a Red Bull system means the running, the volume of sprints they have to do, the pressing, it means it would work he would work well in our team. So definitely one to be excited about. Obviously some people are like, when they hear project, they're like, oh, but we need to win now. At the end of the day, we would have won the league or the Champions League this season if everyone was fit. I fully believe that.
You
The
think?
issue,
Yeah,
I think if we just had more depth, not
sure.
even like the first team being any different, just having the depth, we would have been challenged right till the very end. And I think when we saw how we were in the big games, I think we'd have been able to win it. But, you know, it's all if buts and whatever. No one cares about that now. But
No, it's true. It's true. I think with Sesko, I think what I'm trying to really pin down, I don't know if I've seen a player who has been like profiled, analyzed so differently amongst loads of people. Now, if I go on Twitter, for example, some people will say raw, bit clumsy, not that impressed from what I see. But then what I've seen is someone who looks very technical. Like I see some of the goals he scored. There was one I loved where I think it was from this season where he was kind of rolled through and it looked set for him to hit on his left, but he just cut in on his right and stroked it into the far corner. Like really quick movement, very agile. I've seen him pull off some good skill. I don't know about his passing range. I can't say I've seen too much of that, and that's, I guess, what we're here to get your expertise on. But then, you know, the aerial threat number, his aerial numbers are very good. If you look purely at FB Ref, he's obviously 6'5", but I don't think at the same time he's seen as like a target man or a battering ram striker. So I'm finding it quite hard to pin down, like, what is his kind of main thing, or is he really just an all-rounder? I guess I'm asking for your help on that. What would you say about him as a profiler player?
so I think a lot of the time, what's interesting is he tries to make things happen a lot by dropping deep and stuff and getting involved in the play. But really, as a player of his profile, he needs to be on the last man, on the shoulder, trying to stretch the defense because he's so quick for someone his size. Which he's about 6'5", but there's people compare him to Haaland. I think they're very different players, but one way that they are similar is that the size of them and the speed. You would look at them and think, oh, they're a target man, but no, actually, it's more about playing the ball in behind. So he'll sometimes, you know, when it's the ball's in your own half, he'll be on it might go wide and try to receive the ball wide, so there's more space to run into, to run central. And there's a few times I've seen him, he does this thing where he'll like receive the ball and there's a man behind him and he'll just flick it around them and then spin them like that. He's quite good at that. There's parts to his game where I'm like, he could definitely. One of the reasons I think we should get him now is because it's about developing him in the right system, not just developing overall. You think about how we play against low blocks more. There's certain like parts of his movement needs work on. There's even parts like aerially, although he is so good, like his jumping so good and how tall he is, there's sides to it where there's that extra aggression that you look at someone like Gabriel or just the best from set pieces, that he could add a bit of that. So, and then he would be like best in the world level. It's not that he's not good. It's just to get to a whole other level. So yeah, for me, when you look at all of these things, I definitely think there's potential there to be really important in our team because of how he can stretch the defense and then also his aerial ability. Then add the ball striking that we don't really have. But when you think of like Saka's crosses into the box, you've got someone now who's got a ridiculous hang time in the air that can bring that down and link players in, or just do it himself, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the aerial threat's a big one. I think it's quite clear when you see with Kai Havertz, when you see even his use of Mikel Merino, it's quite clear you've got to be some kind of threat in the air for Mikel Arteta to want to use you up front regularly. Which is, look, I am personally a little bit resistant to that because I think we played our best football 2 years ago when it was Trossard in the false nine or Jesus dropping in. Now, Sesko maybe can do a bit of both, can drop in, but can also, be that profile he wants up front. In terms of dropping into midfield, I always find this interesting when strikers do it because, I think you can do it. Harry Kane would drop in and he'd use his body really well. He would hold off defenders. He'd be able to roll a player. He could even carry a little bit up the pitch. But some are dropping in like Firmino, but I'm making it sound like Harry Kane doesn't do this, but he did anyway. But Firmino was like an extra midfielder. It was about the link up. It was almost about being a 10 and a creative player. Now, to be fair, again, Harry Kane did a bit of that. But I guess all this to ask, what is Sesko dropping into midfield to do, I suppose? Is he to play 1-2s off? Is he to roll defenders? Because one of the things that stood out on FB Ref, and I don't think you can really look at just kind of numbers and go, right, that's the player. But he definitely is up there for carries, total carrying distance, progressive carries, all that kind of stuff. So is he someone that's willing to kind of drop in and go, let me drive with the ball? Because you don't see that from someone who's 6'5" normally.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It's exactly what I was going to say. He'll drop deep and maybe lay the ball off and then try to receive it again. But he likes to have the ball running at the defence and try and take on players. He's not like, there's a lot about him which isn't what you'd expect from a player. When you first get the first glance and you think, oh, no, this is how he'll play. I'm like, no, just forget all of that. Just watch. And I think running out the defence is definitely part of it. Is long range passing, in terms of dropping it, like Kane, that was a lot of what he would do and spray it wide to Son or whoever. But he doesn't do as much of that, and if he does, he's quite inconsistent with his passing range. But I think generally it's more to be running into space. So if you put him in a system where he doesn't have to drop deep and he can just stay on the last man and make the run, which I think, although we don't play very transitional, one thing I will say is I think we're not set up to do so with the right profiles. If you get a different left winger and a different striker who will make the runs earlier and are a lot quicker, it means that early ball is always on, and someone like Odegaard should improve a lot with that. Also, Marino's quite good at that early pass as well. And depending on who we have in midfield, if we get a new player, and obviously Zubimendi will also help with that. That should really help him to not have to drop deep as much. And that alone, I think, is a big way he can get a lot more goals.
Yeah, that's fair. I saw something interesting from George on Cannon talking to Alex, and he was saying he plays in a way at Leipzig right now to facilitate the fact that Openda's there. But actually, this is someone who should be a poacher himself. And it sounds like from what you're saying, great, you can drop into midfield. Good luck ever convincing Mikel Arteta that the striker shouldn't drop into midfield. I mean, Aubameyang scoring all those goals and he still tweaked his role. But ultimately, you want someone as well who is going to make that run. And to be fair, and I'm not Kai Havertz's biggest fan, I really am not. But actually, it's the one thing I think he did really well up front when he was there. I think he made really good runs off the ball. And I don't mean just attacking space and space invading and all this stuff that almost gets ridiculed. I think even against mid and low blocks, he made really good darts in behind that Odegaard would find. He'd make really good little dashes into space and actually quite often find himself in front of goal. And I think if Sesko can play on that side, like you said, he's really quick. That is something that definitely stood out to me when I was watching. This isn't a slow player at 6'5". This is someone who's really physically gifted. 6'5", good leap. You said, hangs in the air a long time, good pace, technical ability looks there to me. I mean, you're sort of designing somewhat. A striker has got most, if not everything, what you need. But what people talk about is the age. It's being raw. And that's going to open a set of questions that have a slightly more negative look at it, because I want to talk about a few things. Where do you land on him and Gyokeres? Is he even better than Havertz? And what's the impact he can have this season? So let's go through one at a time. Where were you on the Gyokeres debate? And that might still be a relevant debate right now. But where do you land on that one?
So there was a thing where I would speak about him because loads of people would be really complimentary about him because they look at his numbers and stuff. But I would try to encourage people to look at other sides to his game. Because, I spoke about him, I've known about him for a long time when he was at Coventry. I watched him when he was at Coventry a lot. And he's like in the nicest way possible, he's like a striker that would go to somewhere like West Ham and would get him into Europa League. And he's not a bad player. I don't think he's a bad player. And I still think, if what it seems like we might be doing is kind of speaking to all the different options, and then we might get to a point where if the Sesko deal fell apart for whatever reason, and then the others weren't possible, then you've got a backup, which I think Berta's he's on it with that stuff, which is a big positive. You hopefully shouldn't have a window like last year where areas go unaddressed that we all know we need. So, that's a big positive. But I think as a whole, there's a lot of red flags with his profile that I worry about how he would transition into our team. The difference with him and Sesko is the areas that Sesko needs to improve on. He's got time on his side. He's 21, 22. I think someone even said it might be his birthday today, so he might be 22 now. So, yeah, happy birthday to him, if it is. Or it's soon or something.
He is... Yes, today. Yes, at the time of recording, Saturday, 31st of May. He's just turned 22. There we go.
All right, so happy birthday to him then. But yeah, so I think he's got time on his side, and I think if you can get him in early, you can develop him into the right player. But there's also this side to it where you can't teach Gyokeres to have the leap that Sesko has. You can't teach him to the level of ball striking he's got. Sesko on both feet. Gyokeres is still good, but it's another level. So I think when you're looking at that, the value of someone like Sesko and what he could become a lot more valuable of a player. Kind of, one of the best in the world. Whereas I think Gyokeres' limitations to his profile. It's not that I wouldn't want him. It's just he's way down the list for me. And I think if you were if you're looking at, there's still a lot of positives with him. Obviously, we can speak about him if we need to another time and go into more detail. I think the biggest positive is the fact that he is older and his mentality and how, his willingness to improve and to learn and to always get better. But I just think when you compare the two, there's way more positives with Sesko.
Interesting. So that leads me to then the other two questions, which was, one of them was simply about Kai Havertz. Is Sesko today a better player than Kai Havertz? Now, I'm going to come really clean on this, and a lot of people who watch this channel will know. Look, I'm not a Kai Havertz hater, far from it. I can totally appreciate. I thought he had a really great 2024, and I actually include the start of this season we just had. I think he started really well. Goals against Southampton, PSG, Wolves on the opening day. I think against Sporting as well. I think he did well. And then I think things started to tail off when he was asked to pick up the areas that Martin Odegaard was picking up. And in his absence, Arteta kind of went for this 4-4-2 with basically Trossard and Havertz both dropping in the pockets. And I didn't really like it. And I felt that was a problem for Kai, and it took away from what he was doing best. So when it came to Odegaard returning and Kai wasn't putting the ball in the back of the net again, I was going, well, yeah, that's not good enough. But at the same time, Arteta's kind of gone, be my striker again. And anyway, so I'm not Kai Havertz's biggest fan, far from it. But I appreciate he's better than probably people give him credit for. Whoever we bring in for me has to be better than this guy. He has to be. Now that doesn't mean that Arteta's going to start the season with Sesko number 9 and that's it. Well done, Kai. Thank you for everything. But I expect that by October, the £65 million striker, £70 million striker is starting games for us. Does that feel plausible to you? Does Sesko, moving Kai Havertz out of the 11 feel plausible to you?
Yes, but at the same time, I even think there's a lot of games where we might play the two together.
Okay.
I think they actually work really nicely together as a profile because you've got one who's more. We were speaking before about the facilitator and the one to run in behind. If you think of someone like Openda and Sesko would basically have Openda's role, and Havertz would have his, because he's a lot way better at facilitating Havertz and bringing the ball down and flicking it on to players. Whether that means you play Havertz from the left centre midfield, or you play them as two literal strikers, or play Havertz as a 10 off him, or something like that. You're basically having him as a second striker, facilitating and making runs off.
We've seen that. When Kai goes from the left 8 to the top tip of a diamond, and Lewis Skelly or whoever inverts. So Arteta's played with this before. Yeah,
definitely. And I think one thing I've always said with Arteta is I think he gives us like little clues of where he wants us to go and how he wants the team to play. And I think a lot of the time how we want to play, we don't have the right players for it. So to really maximise it, I'm not trying to give him excuses or whatever, but you look at the attackers we've got, I'm like, they're not comparable. We don't have apart from, if you took Saka out of our attack is not top 5 in the league. There's loads.
I agree more.
Way more.
I think it's 10th, maybe.
It's way lower down there.
Bowen and Kudu start for us, and that's where West Ham. Yeah, so I agree. Yeah.
Or you look at Brentford. You've got Wissa and Wemo, Shardo. I'm like that 3 that are really good. So there's a lot of really good attacks in this league, and I think ours on paper aren't comparable a lot of the time. But no, as a whole, I think Sesko, there's definitely some traits that are better than Havertz, 100%. Even now, even when he's not refined, being a different profile, someone who I always reference when Gabriel Jesus came back from injury, because I've been wanting a striker who will make that run constantly. When he came back from injury this season, it was like he was suddenly obsessed with scoring goals. I know he didn't play very many, but there was just little glimpses. I was like, this is what we need. And he was constantly making that run, and he had that confidence to shoot from different angles, chip in the keeper here, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was different, because before he was dropping and linking players, and he just had that extra edge to him. I'm like, if you can add that would take us up levels, because it creates more space. So in that way, he's better. But there are sides where I'm like, Havertz's hold up, link up play is better at the moment. So I could see a world where Havertz starts from the beginning, then they play together a little bit, and then Sesko takes over by second half of the season. But I still think you'll rotate. You will never fully, he's the number one striker until like a year or two down the line. Sesko, that'll be his spot.
Yeah, that's fair. Does he take us closer to the title, Sesko?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for me, definitely it does. Like I said before, it's just about having the depth for me right now.
Sure.
It's more about the reason why it's him over a Gyokeres is in the big games. Like, you want a guy who can have a moment out of nowhere and can dominate any centre back. And I'm like, if you go to the Bernabeu or San Siro, whoever, a big Champions League game, or you go and play Liverpool or Man City in the league, he's the type of striker that you'd want there.
Interesting. Okay. Look, I'm like what I'm hearing, and to make my feelings clear on the player, I kept saying I was kind of 55-45 in favour of Gyokeres, but I always said I haven't watched the two, so don't take that as anything other than just me. Do you know what? It was driven more. When I say I haven't watched the two, I've watched comps, I've watched some big games, whatever. I got a good idea for the players, but nowhere near to the level that you do. And what made me lean towards Gyokeres was actually less about the two players and more about the wants and needs of Arsenal this summer, which is I need someone who comes in and tells me I'm better than Kai Havertz, I'm better than Gabriel Jesus, and I am someone you can rely on to score some goals. And I just felt I got that more from Gyokeres and Sesko. Very, very, very surface level thinking, but it was just where I am. And I actually think Arsenal could do with a bit of surface level thinking to their recruitment. I think they could do with a bit of let's not reinvent the wheel, we're signing this player to do this, but that player to do that, or whatever. So anyway, that's where I landed. But when I've listened to you, when I've listened to Alex and George, when I've kind of just actually been able to get into a little bit more of the meat of these two players, I can't pretend Sesko isn't the player I gravitate way more towards. I like him more. Forget what Arsenal need. Forget the context of Arsenal season, what they need to do next year. I just like Sesko more. technically I like him more. His kind of profile, like his strengths and weaknesses, I like more. But I just felt that Gyokeres might just be worth a gamble. It might just be worth, what if those 50 goals he scored in Portugal, he gets 25, 30 in the league? Like, what if? And I always looked at his championship numbers and went, well, Watkins made the transition. Why couldn't this guy, whose numbers are quite similar in the championship? So that was in my mind. But I'm by no means like disappointed by this, because I think we are signing one of the most exciting young strikers in world football if we get it, if it gets done. But for me, it does put pressure on the left winger. And that's kind of the last thing I want to ask you about. Now, I can stomach not getting the... And when I say stomach, people go, oh, here you go, James, defending everything Arteta and the club do. When I say stomach, I mean, I can understand... Am I meant to be annoyed that Arsenal want to sign one of the most exciting strikers, young strikers in world football? No, don't expect me to be disappointed about it, but it puts a lot more pressure on the left winger for me now, and I think we have to address that. If we'd gone and got Isak up front, for example, I'd have gone, do you know what, Martin and Trossard's levels might go up because they've got an Isak, and actually I'd talk more about the number 10. But I think we need something really special in that front line. If Sesko is an improvement, but not exactly that special addition right now, then there's more pressure on the left wing. So I've been on and on. I've been going on, sorry. But all this to say, where do you land on the left winger front? How important is that? And what are the names you think we should really be like trying to make a statement with?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting topic. So I think a lot of the time, I looked at the two, and I think the left wing market is better right now than the striker market.
Yeah.
So I was more thinking, get the better, like get someone who, as a striker, could become that, the one that we want, rather than trying to find it when it's not there. And then go get a left winger that is going to be a serious level raiser. And I think if you can find a player who, put aside whether they're raw or not, someone who is a complete 1v1 specialist, who out wide can add that, a real threat that you can't double up on Saka, because then you're leaving him alone. You know, that's the kind of thing that we need, where there's so many defenders now where when Martinelli is up against them, I feel like they're just like, oh, you know, it's not that I think Martinelli's not all that. It's just, he's a threat in behind. If you pass the ball in behind, he's really dangerous. But, you know, 1v1 thing, he just gets to a point where he looks lost of how to take someone on. If you can add someone who can add that threat, but they're also so unpredictable, they can just whip it top bins, or they can take it round and hit it across goal, or they can be creative as well. I think that's what we need. That's where you can have the real level raiser. So then now, depending who the striker is, you might want a different left winger. You then think if they've got to be a good creator as well, because Sesko is more the goal scorer. Yeah. He's not going to be the facilitator type. So for me, there's a few names out there, I'm like, I think who've got a bit of both. I really like, it's maybe unpopular, I just really like Leao. I don't think we will go for him personally. But I think he's got some crazy ability of, like, I think of a lot of the time when I think of these players, I'm like, if we're playing at the Bernabeu in a semi-final, I know we won that, the quarterfinal. But I mean, if you've got a big game like that and you've got a transition, who do I think is going to get the ball, run half the length of the pitch and get me a goal? It's someone like Leao. So he's not the only one. I do like Rodrigo. I don't know how likely that is. Just that. I don't know how likely is he's available, because I think you've got to wait until he's spoken to Alonso and Alonso's come in and said what his plans are for him. Then we'll have a bit more clarity with that. Then there's also the fact that Man City might, would they go in for him big? So other wingers, I'm like, really like Gittins. Similar profile to Leao, but there's more to work with there. Williams, I do like a lot, but I think the others are a bit more Mavericks.
Right.
I think he's more of a creator, but I do think in our system he'd work really well.
Yeah.
He's not like your. I think he was probably who we'll go for. If I'm honest, I think we've been interested with him for so long. And then another that I don't think will happen. It's hard to tell, but there's been rumors recently with Barkala, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I just feel like right now, like last season, even when Kvaratskhelia came in, he still played a lot. Like they rotated constantly.
Yeah.
So is there enough there for him to stay? Maybe.
Yeah. That's a fair point.
Yeah, but we'll see because one thing that people have mentioned is Berta being more of an agent's guy than Edu would have been, and how we were before, and he's got a relationship with George Mendes, he's a good partnership there at times. So
Yeah.
He's a Mendes client. Maybe that's something that pops up. But yeah, these are any of these, and I'd be happy. To be fair, I think all of them add a threat we just don't have. So I know that there'll be some that we will miss out, and one of those will go to a rival team, whether it's Chelsea or Man City or whoever. As long as we get one, we'll be fine.
Well, let's see if we do. Yeah. Let's see if we do. I mean, I like all the names you said there, and I know what you mean about getting a maverick left winger. I think we need some unpredictability. But Arteta has said something that I didn't expect him to say. He said the team needs creativity. And for a second I went, oh, great. So you agree we need a maybe creative type? And then I remembered a few things. Fabio Vieira returns. I think he'll be given a pre-season. Wanera, he tends to play in central spaces. Max Dowman, everyone keeps talking about. So there'll be some kind of path for him, whether I agree with it or not. As brilliant as he is, obviously he's very young. But then added to that, actually, all our creativity comes from wider areas anyway. I mean, Odegaard has to go out to that position to create most of the time as well. So I think the dream of mine that a 10 comes in to give us that creativity is he's probably going to go for the Nico Williams type and actually ensure that creativity comes from wider areas. But let's see. It'll be really, really interesting. Ben, we'll leave it there, man. Look, thank you for your insight and your expertise. I'm really excited to do this weekly, and everyone watching, this is what we're going to do. We're going to basically just show up. Hopefully every Monday, that's the plan, but obviously things change, but we'll do our absolute best. Big up to Max as well, as doing all the editing and production and all this, so big thank you to him. And send us your comments, send us the things you'd like to see. Like, send us the things you'd like to hear Ben talk about, players you'd like to hear Ben talk about. We can do Q&As where we go through players that you guys send through, and we can sort of, I'll do some research as well. I won't just sit here and just pass it all over to Ben. But yeah, we can kind of talk about this all in detail. I just think this is going to be a really busy summer for Arsenal. And I think there's going to be a relentless churn of information, links, rumours, reports, and actually, I think there'll be a lot of transfers. I think there'll be a lot happening in and out. And I think it'll be important to talk about some of the outs as well and understand exactly who we're signing and why we're trying to look at certain players. So Ben, big thank you, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks a lot. And looking forward to doing the rest. And so I know there's going to be some random players pop up, so it'll be exciting to talk about them as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be really fun. Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Catch you on a bit.